when she kicks me out. I can just, go down the hill to the recording studio.
Is that what happens when you guys have a dispute?
It's been 20 years since the tumultuous romance between Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie first grabbed the public's attention. Although they often showed their love publicly, cracks gradually appeared. What was the real reason for the breakup? Was it the pressure of fame, lifestyle differences, or something deeper? After 2 decades, Billy Bob Thornton has finally revealed the reason why he and Angelina decided to divorce. Let's explore these interesting revelations. To get to the root of the problem, let's start with our beautiful girl, Angelina. Early life of Angelina Jolie. As a member of the Jolie family, Angelina Jolie entered the world on June 4, 1975. The acting career of her father, Jon Voight, was well established. For his role in Coming Home, he was awarded an Oscar. The late Marceline Bertrand wanted to be an actress, and Angelina was her daughter. But she put her dreams on hold to care for her brother James Haven and daughter Angelina. Living in Los Angeles put her right in the middle of Hollywood's glitz and glamour. But things weren't always as they seemed. Most of Angelina's upbringing came from her mother after her parents parted when she was a year old. Young Angelina's connection with her father was complex, and the separation would affect her for a long time. According to her, she felt abandoned, and that hurt had influenced all of her choices, especially in connection to her relationships. Angelina was well versed in the film industry, even though her mother was a single parent. The first place she had an interest in performing was on movie sets, which her mom would take her to. Angelina Jolie was anything, not your average Hollywood youngster. She was the one who always dared to break away from the norm, even though most of her pals were quite conformist. She embodied Gothic culture and was somewhat darker and rougher than typical. She often wore black. She would become socially isolated and an outcast as a result of this. She had a hard time establishing her identity as a teenager and frequently felt alone. During this time, she began taking acting training at the Lee Strasberg Theatre Institute and appearing in stage productions. Not only did she experience parental estrangement throughout her formative years, but she also faced other challenges. Episodes of depression were among Angelina's emotional issues. However, such a phase did not hinder Angelina's gifted talent and strong will on her path to success. How did she become famous? Let's take a look back at her golden age. Become famous. Angelina Jolie's Hollywood star started to rise during the mid-1990s. In 1998, she received a Golden Globe for her portrayal of supermodel Gia Karangi in the television film Gia, which was her breakout role. Reviewers were raving about the picture, praising her forceful and genuine performance. Hollywood took note when it became clear she possessed a certain quality that lent nuance and passion to every role she portrayed. She had a life-altering role in the 1999 film Girl Interrupted. In her role as the unstable Lisa Rowe, Angelina Jolie grabbed the show and won Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars. The part solidified her reputation as a talented actress of her day. A person's private life becomes a topic of public curiosity when they become famous, and Angelina Jolie's was no exception. By contrast, Angelina's fame as a renegade kid began to soar during this period. Many people saw her as daring and unexpected, which frightened the media and the general public. Her brother gets kissed on the lips by her at the 2000 Academy Awards. For years to come, this would spark tabloid rumors. Angelina Jolie's personal life added to her mystique, which propelled her to stardom despite the scandal. Her defiance, however, did not end with those outbursts reminiscent of a Hollywood star. Angelina was a daring and exciting young woman who liked to enjoy life to the fullest. In both her professional and personal life, she had always dared to do things differently. A lady who had become fiercely independent, passionate, and intense was laid the groundwork for by Angelina's upbringing. A combination of factors, including her father's alienation, struggles with identity, and her rapid ascent to stardom, influenced her approach to her romantic relationships. She had trust and abandonment difficulties stemming from her past, but she yearned for profound relationships with people. Angelina began to branch out in ways unrelated to acting, even as she advanced in her profession. She went on a mission conflict and adopting children from all over the globe. Her dedication to helping others elevated her public profile a new level, and she quickly became famous as an activist and humanitarian in addition to her acting career. By the time she met Billy Bob Thornton, she had already experienced the highs and lows of life, and her passion for performing and rebellious attitude set her apart from others. Their romance will soon be the most talked about in Hollywood, but Angelina had to overcome personal struggles and career successes to get there. At a time when Angelina Jolie was establishing herself in Hollywood, Billy Bob Thornton was living a completely different life. What was Billy Bob's strange life like? Let's find out a little about him. Billy Bob Thornton's early life and Hollywood journey. Far from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, Billy Bob Thornton came into this world on August 4, 1955, in Hot Springs, Arkansas. The stark simplicity and unforgiving nature of rural America shaped Billy Bob's relatively ordinary childhood in a tiny town. His mother, Virginia Roberta, was a clairvoyant, and his father, William Raymond Thornton, was a high school history teacher and basketball coach. So from an early age, he had been exposed to both the rational world of his father and the mystical world of his mother. The intricate personality, which was fundamentally pragmatic and yet philosophical, might be explained by this strange blend. Billy Bob had a really difficult childhood. He came from humble beginnings, where frugality was valued and toil was required. At a young age, Billy Bob learned the importance of grit and determination as he helped support his family by taking on odd jobs. The infectious sounds of Southern rock, country, and blues piqued his interest in music at a young age. Billy Bob aspired to be a professional musician and self-taught guitar and drums. However, escaping a little Arkansas community is no picnic. After graduating from high school, Billy Bob worked in fast food and road construction, two low-paying industries. He joined many local bands to pursue music professionally. However, the path to achievement appeared insurmountable. In the late 1970s, he dared to leave Arkansas and go to Los Angeles in pursuit of his aspirations. Billy Bob was embarking on his journey to fame with nary an instrument in his bag save a guitar. He had a tough time getting his start in Hollywood. Billy Bob had trouble getting regular gigs at first, as did a lot of other up-and-coming musicians. He frequently spent the night in his automobile and lived in dives. Billy Bob must have felt like an alien in Hollywood, where they weren't exactly treated well. The music was his life, but he quickly realized that making it was as difficult, if not more so, than acting. He redirected his efforts into acting and screenplay in the hopes that his imagination would lead to opportunities. Billy Bob eventually broke through in 1992 with his co-writing and acting in the crime film One False Move, which drew both reviewers and audiences to him. The film was a financial success, and Billy Bob finally got his due in the entertainment industry. But it wasn't until Sling Blade came out in 1996 that he became famous. Billy Bob not only starred in the picture, directed it, and wrote the script, but he also wrote the screenplay. In addition to his Best Actor nomination, he won an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for his portrayal of the mentally disabled man, Carl Childers. Billy Bob's career took a dramatic swing with Sling Blade. His career was defined by his ability to convey intense emotions via his writing and acting, and all of this contributed to his stellar reputation. More important than any image, in Billy Bob's eyes, was being genuine about being himself. He was quite vocal about his distaste for the Hollywood machine and how it relied on fame for its survival. He gained admirers and detractors alike for his candid criticisms of the industry's superficiality in interviews. He had a reputation as a rebel who spoke his mind and refused to blend in with the Hollywood crowd because he refused to play the game. His relationships were likewise profoundly impacted by his background. Billy Bob had many marriages before he met Angelina, and each one had a little bit of his complex nature. Billy Bob was infamous for his fiery personality and boundless energy. He frequently emotionally detached himself when his sensations were overwhelming. There was a clear conflict between his desire for autonomy and his need for meaningful connection in his previous marriages, which had their share of problems. The beginning of an unlikely love story. Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie, an unlikely pair from opposite worlds, found themselves in a passionate love affair that engulfed millions. How can these two different people come together? Stay tuned, this is an interesting story. Love story Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie. It was on the set of Pushing Tin in 1999 when the events that would later unfold in the story began. Even though she was in her 20s at the time, Angelina Jolie was still trying to figure out who she was in the Hollywood industry. During the time when she was not a worldwide hit, she frequently appeared in films that emphasized her rebellious spirit and portrayed roles that were considered to be edgy. In contrast, Billy Bob Thornton had already established himself as a prominent figure in the acting and directing professions 20 years before the release of his film. He had a reputation for being rough, no-nonsense, and uncompromising, which earned him the reputation of being a bit of a Hollywood outsider. When these two first lay eyes on one another, a spark of affection ignited between them. During that particular scenario, the energy that existed between the two of them was so strong that it could be felt by everyone who was watching. They felt an immediate and intense connection to one another. Despite the fact that they were all of different ages, races, and personalities, it did not influence the outcome. In point of fact, it is conceivable that disparities of this nature were the first spark that lit their romantic relationship. Within a short period of time, Billy Bob and Angelina began their path toward a love relationship with one another. They skipped the customary celebrity engagement in Hollywood and instead made their getaway to Sin City in the year 2000. The wedding had not even been planned months in advance, let alone a large and extravagant affair. Instead, they made the decision to take a chance, to be impulsive, to intensify their passion, and to be a little bit crazy in their confession of love. A great many individuals were taken aback by the rapidity with which everything seemed to be happening. Their perception that it was accurate was the most important thing. For a period of time, Billy Bob and Angelina were the romantic leads in a film that was produced in Hollywood. They were in the headlines every minute, not because of their job in Hollywood, but because of the ardent and frequently peculiar displays of affection that they displayed. The custom of wearing vials that contained each other's blood around their necks became well known to the public. However, you are quite right. To them, it was a representation of the profound connection they had and the extent to which they cared for one another. On the other hand, it seemed weird, strange, and even unsettling to everyone else. Even though their relationship was already cloaked in mystery, this audacious gesture only served to make things even more so. They struggled for some time to determine whether or not it would be successful. Nevertheless, in the end, their love was not enough to support them. The strain of their arguments and the unrelenting pressure from the media finally led them to give up on what they had accomplished together. Despite the fact that they had the best of intentions, the constant scrutiny of the public eye makes it hard to pay attention to topics that are of a private nature. Every argument and disagreement was exacerbated by the intense scrutiny of the paparazzi, which further strained their relationship, which was already in a precarious state. They were finally unable to be saved by anything, not even their tight friendship. Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton surprised the world once more when they revealed that they were going to divorce, this time 2 years after they had been married. The supporters were overcome with disappointment, and the journalists were inundated with inquiries about the current situation. How is it possible for a love that appeared to be so stable and unchanging to vanish on its own? During that period, at least part of that was not obvious. Why did their passionate love story turn into one of Hollywood's most surprising breakups? Maybe there will be clues in the previous relationships of this duo. Billy Bob Thornton's previous marriages. Let's find out more to understand the problem. Billy Bob Thornton's previous marriages. As if things couldn't get any weirder, Billy Bob Thornton had a run of rocky marriages before he met Angelina Jolie. Angelina Jolie was the first woman he ever married. During the time when Angelina and Billy Bob were beginning to develop feelings for one another, Billy Bob had already completed the laborious and taxing tasks that come with being a married man 5 times. He had a love affair that was passionate but turbulent, and his marriage was hardly a walk in the park. His perspective on the institution was profoundly altered as a result of those occurrences, and they threw a cloud of suspicion over his ties going forward. For the first time, Billy Bob tied the knot with Melissa Lee Gatlin in the year 1978. In spite of the fact that they did produce a daughter named Amanda, their marriage did not last very long. Through the dissolution of his marriage in 1980, Billy Bob experienced his first taste of divorce at an early stage in his adult life. His following marriages were marked by the baggage of unresolved feelings of love and stability, which he carried with him from the time of his first marriage until its dissolution. In the aftermath of the dissolution of his first marriage, Billy Bob did not waste any time in pursuing a new romantic relationship. During the year 1986, he tied the knot with the actress Toni Lawrence, and he promptly embarked on yet another tumultuous marriage that did not last long. In the same way that his prior romantic relationships were charged with electric energy, Billy Bob's bond with Toni, who was an actor, was also electrifying. Nevertheless, much like his prior marriage, this one ended in a very short amount of time like the others. Their divorce was finalized in 1988, after they had been married for somewhat less than 2 years. Billy Bob was once again confronted with the emotional impact of a broken romantic relationship, as well as the precariousness of marriage. Cinda Williams, an actress that Billy Bob had met on the production of One False Move, became his third wife in 1990. Billy Bob was unmoved by the news and became married to her. However, their marriage followed the same predictable course as his past nuptials, despite the fact that their on-screen romance transferred effectively into real life. However, the couple's love for one another was overpowered by expectations from the outside world, and in 1992, only 2 years after they had been married, they filed for divorce. Before reaching the age of 40, Billy Bob had already been through 3 weddings, and as a result, he began to view love with a cynical perspective. By the time Billy Bob tied the knot for the 4th time in 1993, he had already established a reputation for recklessly entering into relationships that typically ended in tragedy. After that, it was Pietra Dawn Cherniak, who was both a model and an actor. This marriage resulted in the birth of William and Harry. The joy of becoming a father was not enough to prevent the dissolution of Billy Bob's marriage, although it looked for a while that Billy Bob's personal life had finally settled into some sort of order. As was the case with them, they divorced in 1997 after being married for a period of 4 years. The emotional toll that another failed marriage took on Billy Bob was significant. He grew considerably more apprehensive of committing to another relationship after each of his 4 divorces, and he began to question his own worth as a result of these experiences. Even though he had an unending love for his children, he came to the conclusion that his marital strategy must have been fundamentally wrong as a result of the events he had undergone throughout his life. It began to dawn on him that he was incapable of being a respectable spouse or of keeping a lady for an extended time. During the early 2000s, while Billy Bob was married to Angelina Jolie for the 6th time, he was introduced to his new lover, Angelina Jolie. At this point, he had developed a more restrained attitude toward romantic relationships than he had previously exhibited. Because Billy Bob had already been married 5 times, he had developed a habit of rushing into intense relationships that would ultimately collapse. He was undoubtedly carrying about the grudges from his infidelity from his previous marriages when he started meeting Angelina. His previous traumas had left him weary of emotionally committing to anybody, and he was wary of making emotional commitments himself. Through his first several marriages, he had gained the knowledge that love, regardless of how deep and comprehensive it was also complicated. He started to wonder if he would ever be able to find love with each breakup he had. At the time when Angelina entered his life, Billy Bob had already gone through the highs and lows of romance on several occasions, and the scars that he had sustained from previous encounters were still fresh. The fact that he had a history of injuring both himself and other people made him apprehensive and somewhat guarded on the inside. Billy Bob has stated his discontent with the way his relationship aligns with his personality in interviews. He claimed that these concerns about love and the fear of falling short continued long into his marriage. Furthermore, he was afraid of falling short. As a result of his worries, he constantly ended relationships, and finally, he became explosive during his marriage to Angelina. The fact that he was unable to find a means to fulfill his desire for love while also providing for his family meant that he was unable to escape an unhappy marriage. The difficult past that Billy Bob had taken with him into his marriage to Angelina was a burden. Even though he loved Angelina very much, he continued to harbor lingering worries and misgivings regarding love and marriage. These doubts and uncertainties were like old baggage from his previous relationships. His inclination to experience tremendous and overwhelming connections was always followed by an inability to resist his desire to emotionally separate himself from those ties. There would come a time when the challenges that were brought about by his history would force his relationship with Angelina to fall apart eventually. During the time that he was married to Angelina, Billy Bob was a man who had experienced love and loss and had gained wisdom from his mistakes. However, ghosts from his past refused to let him go through with his plans. His insecurities and the emotional baggage he carried from his prior marriages proved to be an invisible wall that stood between him and Angelina, regardless of how hard he tried to overcome it. His previous partnerships, which contributed to his choice to stop the marriage, were the source of his fear of failure, and Angelina Jolie's previous marriages were also a factor in his decision to end the marriage. Before marrying Billy Bob Thornton, Angelina Jolie had experienced the best and worst of marriage. What did she go through? Was this part of the reason why the couple broke up? Let's find out. Jolie's previous marriages. An actor from the United Kingdom named Johnny Lee Miller was Angelina's first spouse in the year 1996. Over the course of their time working together on the set of Hackers in 1995, they developed a passionate relationship that rapidly went from being a casual friendship to something more important. Even though she was just 20 years old, they were madly over heels in love with one another. During the wedding ceremony between Johnny and her, she was renowned for her attire, which consisted of black leather pants and a white top with his name written in her blood. Angelina was entirely engulfed by the gesture, which was a representation of her fervent personality and her all-or-nothing commitment. In spite of the depth of their affection for one another, Angelina and Johnny's marriage only lasted for a little over 3 years. They divorced in 1999, even though they continued to keep friendly connections. In subsequent interviews, Angelina expressed her admiration for Johnny, stating that the couple's breakup was more likely to be attributed to disparities in time and life circumstances than to a lack of love between them that existed between them. Regardless of how much Johnny meant to Angelina, she was aware that they could not remain together for an indefinite period, since she was still in the process of figuring out where she belonged in the world. Both parties had a cordial relationship throughout the duration of the divorce, and none of them carried any ill will toward the other. Almost immediately following the conclusion of her marriage to Johnny Lee Miller, Angelina Jolie engaged in her second marriage. In the year 2000, she tied the knot with the actor Billy Bob Thornton. Because of their unconventional and passionate romance, Hollywood was rapidly engulfed in flames. In Billy Bob, who was much like her in that he was a free spirit who enjoyed living her life on her terms, she found the ideal companion. Billy Bob shared her passion for breaching boundaries, and she found that he was the same way. Their love was filled with passionate outbursts, and their romance was filled with passionate affection. One of the more notorious examples is the fact that they were known to wear vials of each other's blood around their necks. On account of this, they gained even greater notoriety as a couple that was known for its eccentricity and enthusiasm. The fact that Angelina has been married in the past has consequently had a significant influence on her understanding of love and commitment. It was during her previous marriage to Johnny Lee Miller that she realized that love does not always last a lifetime. This was the lesson she learned about timing. She went through the highs and lows of a passionate relationship with Billy Bob, but she also realized that characters and life paths that are incompatible with one another have the potential to destroy even the most enduring of relationships. What was the reason behind the conclusion of such a lovely love story? Over 20 years, Billy Bob Thornton has finally put an end to a topic that has been bothering everyone ever since his high-profile separation with Angelina Jolie. This question has been a source of concern for everyone. What was the reason behind his decision to quit a relationship that appeared to be so strong and passionate? In one candid, very rare interview, Billy Bob spoke of deeply personal reasons for the divorce, and as it turned out, the real reason was not as simple as anybody had thought. What's deeper here? Let's hear his explanation. The real reason Billy Bob Thornton chose divorce. The reason for this was his profound self-doubt, his crippling anxiety about his inadequacy, and the immense expectations that come with being the son of a major Hollywood celebrity. As the public saw through their passionate front, cracks were beginning to show. Billy Bob says that the main issue wasn't that they didn't love each other, or that they fought, but that he felt he could never measure up to what Angelina was becoming. Billy Bob has stated in interviews that he felt uneasy and couldn't live up to the expectations that come with marrying someone as famous as Angelina Jolie. This, among other things, led to the divorce. He spoke about Angelina's high-profile, flashy existence and how he simply wasn't at ease with it. Billy Bob couldn't handle the stress of becoming a celebrity. Everything people saw was captivated by Angelina's magnetic presence. Billy Bob, who always fancied himself someone who preferred to keep to himself, was not happy with this kind of attention. He lamented that rather than being an equal partner in Angelina's life, he felt more like a sidekick. He began to worry that she might find someone else as her celebrity expanded. But there was a very crucial component in how their goals had diverged, and discrepant renown wasn't the only reason Billy Bob decided to quit the marriage. Using her fame for good was something that Angelina was deeply committed to. As her sense of self-identity grew, she felt compelled to advocate for problems such as global health and refugee rights. Billy Bob appreciated it in her, but he was well aware that he didn't belong there. Without the tumultuous pressures of a worldwide audience, he was happy to focus on his acting and singing. Billy Bob realized he couldn't stay up with the one path Angelina's life was taking, since their paths were diverging. His ongoing battles with his psyche also had a role in Billy Bob's choice. To make matters worse, he has gone public with his struggles with anxiety and depression, adding to the pressures of being in a public relationship. He worried he lacked the emotional stability necessary to remain in the marriage due to the intensity of their joint public existence. He ultimately decided that dissolving the marriage was best for them both due to his mental health difficulties and worries about not being enough for Angelina. Billy Bob made it plain that they were still on good terms, even if he had chosen to depart. He gushed over Angelina, saying that she was an amazing human being who had provided him with life-changing opportunities. His choice to end their marriage was based on his feelings for her, not her character. His internal conflict and the fact that he couldn't stay in a relationship where he felt so alienated were the main factors. They managed to keep their relationship civil throughout the years. They maintained infrequent communication as they moved on with their own lives. 20 years since their divorce, Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie have taken divergent paths in life. And do you wonder what will happen to them after the divorce? Will they feel sorry for themselves or move forward? Life after divorce. After marrying Brad Pitt and establishing a large brood, Angelina Jolie quickly rose to the position of Hollywood powerhouse. Along with her acting career, she has been an outspoken supporter of human rights and humanitarian causes on a worldwide scale, further solidifying her legacy in areas outside of Hollywood. But Billy Bob opted for a quieter, more understated lifestyle. After the separation, he continued performing and acting, but he avoided the media circus that surrounded Angelina. He maintained a steady schedule in cinema and television, which suited his laid-back demeanor. Even though they are no longer physically together, they remain amicable. Billy Bob has been quite kind about Angelina, mentioning that they stay in touch from time to time and that he still has a great deal of respect for her. Despite their differences, he has praised her in interviews and said that they had no animosity toward one another. Neither the romance nor its end has left Billy Bob with any remorse. What do you think about Billy Bob Thornton's decision to divorce? Some commentators say it's a happy ending for both of them. Do you think it's right? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. Thank you and see you in the next video.